Shut up, compressor.
Off with 4 at 1-8, over. Roger, take care.
Hey everyone, Matt here with Dukes Models, and welcome to episode 6 of the Tamiya F-4B Phantom build. Now, it's been a few weeks since I've been working on the Phantom and recording videos and all that, because I got sidetracked by a bunch of tank-shaped squirrels. However, it's a new year, it's literally New Year's Day, and those tanks have been cleared off the bench, and it is now time to get back to aircraft funtime land. Now, the F4 itself is sitting right here, just a arm's length away from where I'm doing everything, and it's in a pretty good spot. I'm doing body work on top of the intakes, back here on the sides of the fuselage, a little bit up here around the nose, if it'll focus, there we go, and just kind of slowly getting it into position for painting. But while I do that, I still want to keep making forward progress, and I don't want to deal with all of this shit at the end. So this video is going to be about working up the landing gear, the gear struts, etc., and of course, the exhausts. So first things first, you need to prime all this stuff. And to do that, I'm going to be using mostly MRP's Black Surface Primer. I've already got it loaded up, so let's go ahead and get spraying. So you get the idea. Because this is pretty rinse and repeat, I'm going to go ahead and pause, and we'll pick back up once everything's primed. Now that the undercarriage stuff is all primed up with MRP Black Primer, it's time to go ahead and move it out of the way and move forward with some Guns GX2. Now, if you've never used Guns GX2 before, you haven't seen me use it, it is a very wonderful gloss black, and it's the perfect base for a shiny metallic like what we would want for hydraulics. So, start with one of these, and the reason I haven't painted or primed the silver portion yet is because this stuff likes to go down over bare plastic. Something else we have to do is deal with the exhausts. Let's see if I can pick these up like so. I've already painted the interior with just regular primer because it's fine. I want to be able to use the GX2 on the outside because that's where I want it to be shiny, at least portions of it. And now it's time to come in with some MRP Chrome and go ahead and get these things all treated up. So I'm not too happy with how the MRP Chrome is going down, and I was going to bust out my Gaia Notes Premium Mirror Chrome stuff, which is just lovely, but come on, you piece of shit. Come on. Try to open this and not get it all over yourself, and of course you do. It's all gone. So big sad panda there. So instead, I'm going to bust out some K-Colors Steel, which is a really nice chrome color. We're going to see how it does spraying on top of a lacquer here. Okay, so now that the K-Colors had a few minutes to set up, it's definitely looking the part. It's nice and shiny. That'll work well. I'm going to give that a little bit of time to really, really dry, though, before I attempt masking it, or else it'll be Lift City. So in the meantime, it's time to move on to spraying some white. Now the speed brakes, I don't need to worry about that much because they are red inside, but I'm going to put a white base down before I go to a yellow base and all that goodness. Okay, so I've got a bunch of shit painted insignia white. Now it's time to slide that stuff off stage left. And I'm going to focus on the interior of the brakes, which need to be yellow so they can become red. And so for this, I'm actually going to be lazy and put them on my little ruler. A great way to do this is these glue dots. They let you be just lazy as all get out. You just put them on. And you take your piece. Yoink. Yoink. And that's it. Nothing to it. Now I've got some MRP. This is my fun mixed bottle. It says Insignia Red. It's not at all Insignia Red. It is World War II marking yellow, and the labels got switched. But whatever, it's just a deep orangey yellow color. Looks kind of like the yellow on the new Bronco. And basically just to burn through the white that was in there. That's it. Just pretty much very basic yellow coat. Okay, so I've gone ahead and masked the hydraulic bits on all of these little attachments. Next up, it is time to go ahead and spray the white. So there's one down. I'll come back and I'll pick up the extra black down at the bottom of the cylinder there. Okay, and now, let's go ahead and get the speed brakes done. So again, I painted these yellow to assist in getting the red down. Let's see how that does. Getting there. Okay, I got one down. I'll go ahead and paint the rest, and we'll be right back. Okay, now that I've got all the internals sprayed, such as the red on the inside of the brakes, it's time to spray the outside of the doors. And for this, I'm using MRP 99 US Navy White. And honestly, this stuff is spraying a little bit thin, so I may end up basing this in something else first. But I want to give it a shot and see how it goes. Because spraying on the edge of my desk and spraying on parts is different things. See, that is having no body whatsoever. Alright. Okay, so I've got the outer gear doors and brakes and whatnot painted in insignia white, and as you can see, the tones between the two are certainly different. Yay. So now I've got a little bit of interior detail painting to do on these doors. Basically, I need to make this area black, and I need to paint a couple things red over here. So for the black, good old Vallejo. Okay. And now it's time to paint some red. Again, using Vallejo. Alright, let those dry, then it's on to some stencil decals for the inside of the doors, and then we're going to get into a magic wash. Alright, let's go ahead and put some decals on things. Thankfully, the AOA sheet has some very wonderful stencils for all over the damn airplane. Lovely. But for right now, we're just focusing on the interior of the speed brakes. So P23 and P24. So we've got those here. They look pretty nice. Definitely better than the really thick Tamiya decals. And I am just going to slice them up, give them a bath, and apply them. And to apply them, I'm going to be using my favorite decal solution, Tamiya Decal Adhesive Softener Type. And here we are with the stencils on the inside of the gear doors and on the gear struts. Next up, it's going to be time to flip these guys over and do the stencils on the outside of the doors. And now it's time to apply some magic wash to the gear doors and the gear struts and things like that. And for this, I'm using about half water, half aqua gloss, about 5 drops of Tamiya Rubber Black, and a few drops of Derivan Matisse Surface Tension Breaker, just to make sure it spreads pretty well across the surface. And then all I'm going to do is just brush it into place. Like so. This stuff is great for areas that you want to be somewhat grungy, like gear bays, gear doors. you feel like it's a bit too intense, we'll go over that in a minute. Get some water, dip the water on the brush, and use that to take it back a bit. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now to see how it works with gear struts, grab the nose gear strut here, grab a little bit of wash, and just bring it down and let it get in all the little nooks and crannies. And for the red brake doors, we're basically going to do the same thing. Just going to grab it right here. The funny thing is, this is rubber black, right? And you've seen it on these other colors where it gets a nice grungy look going on. Well, watch what happens when it goes down over red. This is kind of fun. It looks purple. Now it'll dry. Fucking compressor. It will not dry purple, so we've got that going for us. But it's a fun instance of where the colors come together to do weird shit. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and hit some of these things with some clear to kind of tone them down a little bit, because the magic wash made them really shiny, and we don't want we don't want gear struts and gear doors super glossy. So move a few of these out of the way. Basically, gear doors, very simple, and I'm using MRP semi-matte for this, so I'm not going to go like completely dead flat. Just going to kind of do that. A little bit heavier here to maybe grab some of that decal film and knock it down. Okay. And then for a gear strut, I'm sure y'all don't want to see me clear coat like the whole damn undercarriage, right? So gear strut, same deal. And there we have a gear strut. Okay, so we're entering the home stretch on the gear struts, and it's time to go ahead and glue in the oleo scissors. These, in typical Tamiya fashion, are ingeniously designed. So basically, we've got, if we can focus. So basically, we've got nice little indents right here and right here where these go. So we're going to get a little bit of Ammo Ultra Glue. Just dab that onto this part because getting into the indent on the gear strut is a pain in the butt. And then just yoink that fucker on there like that. Come in and drop a little bit in there too. A little bit on that little pin. There we have it. And then we're just going to let that dry for a bit, and then we will move on to installing the wheels. Okay, so the next thing I have to do off the bench, because I've got the Phantom here, and I've gone ahead and plugged in the gear struts, both sides and up here in the nose. And now I want to go ahead and mount the wheels. And for this, I've gone ahead and grabbed Edwards' Brasson set, which is really, really nice in terms of detail. You know, unlike the kit tires, they actually have the radial tread here that kicks up the detail a bit, and the wheels themselves just look gorgeous. The only problem is, as gorgeous as they are just, come on, focus. They're just a little bit floppy. So they need some epoxy love. And to do that, I'm going to set the Phantom down on a piece of glass so it's nice and flat. Use epoxy to get the wheels placed, and then just kind of fiddle with them in the 5 minutes or so I have before everything sets up. But that piece of glass is somewhere else on the bench and not directly where the camera is. So I'm going to knock that out and be right back. Okay, so here we are with the glued on wheels, 2-part JB Weld epoxy doing the dirty work there. And I have to say, these Edward wheels, while they do go on with epoxy, they are a squirrely as fuck fit because the holes are slightly larger than the cone-shaped mounts that Tamiya uses for the gear struts. So you put the wheels on, and they just want to flop and flip all over the damn place. Thankfully, you know, epoxy gets the job done. But maybe a little tip for anybody who is doing these and also thinking about swearing at them constantly, what I found to work really well was once I got the glue kind of setting up, and once I got, you know, the sit of the flat part of the tire aligned properly, I came in literally with a clothespin and just pinched the clothespin around the back of the gear strut and the wheel itself and just left them there until it hardened. And that got to a pretty good place. They're probably still misaligned and they will probably flunk in any sort of competition, but whatever. So with that, I have the gear struts and the gear doors and things like that pretty much wrapped up. Now it's time to deal with the exhausts. Okay, that's enough of the gear doors and gear struts and all that. It's time to move on to the exhausts. And this time out, I want to do something a little different. In the past, I've done these like, you know, dark steel color and a darker steel color and kind of thing. This time I want to introduce some brown into the mix. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing some MRP steel with some dark earth, which looks like it gives kind of the right tone, at least based on what I'm seeing on the paint mule here, to match some of the reference photos I've got, or get in the ballpark. Okay, I'm liking where that's going. Alright, now it is time to paint the base of the exhausts. And for this, I am using a mix of MRP steel and MRP 36076. This is a kind of purple tinted dark gray. It's what you see on, there's an Aggressor Hornet that's kind of done up to look like an SU-34, and it uses that. And so basically we'll get a darker steel with some purple tones happening in it. And that looks kind of close to some of the references I've got, so it'll be a good starting point, I hope. Next time I should pay attention to where I start. So yeah, that plus oils and various weathering things, and maybe a little bit of a treatment around the sort of ring right before the exhaust pedals. I think that'll look pretty damn cool. Okay, so here we've got the sprayed base of the exhaust. I went ahead and added a few drops of Insignia Blue to the mix to do this ring sort of right up against the exhaust pedals. Now let's go ahead and rip this off. Nice thing about MRP metallics is you can mask over them. And so we've got this as the base for the exhaust cans, which looks pretty damn cool. Now it's time to go on to busting out things to weather it up, pick out these details, and make it look grungy. It's time to apply the magic wash, same as we've been doing to the gear struts and the gear doors. And I'm going to start on the pedals, and I'm going to go heavy on these because they're a darker color than the white. So we want more of it to show up if we can. This stuff fades out a lot as it dries. Definitely one of those processes where you have to do it and kind of learn how much it changes and fades out as it goes so that you can kind of trust the process a bit. If you don't, you're going to think, oh shit, this is going to look terrible. I'm flooding this and it's not working. And then when it dries, you're like, oh, cool. And not even just after like 15 minutes, but like come back the next day and see how it looks. And you might be quite surprised. Any way to hold this. Okie doke. And there we have it. Let that dry and move on to the next step. Okay, so the rubber black magic wash has had overnight to set up, and now I am going to move into another magic wash, this time made with some Liquitex carbon black ink, to really bring out the pedal detail on these exhaust cans. This is one where I'm going for some intentionally higher contrast than you might see on reference photos, but it's because these cans are, kind of buried on the bottom back of the Phantom, and we really want this detail to pop. So the black ink flows wonderfully into all the little nooks and crannies and gets us pretty much where we want to be. This is, one of yet more layers to come, so hopefully this is making sense. Because I'm not going to lie, the order of attack on this Phantom is just taking me for a fucking ride right now. But I'm just trying to focus on these little elements that I can get out of the way now before we move into the larger airframe. It's looking pretty cool though. Alright, so we got that one out of the way. Let's move around to the inside. The inside I want to be dirty, so going a bit heavy with this as a base. Actually toying around with the idea of literally getting some black pigment and adding some water to it, or maybe even some something that'll help it flow, and just kind of painting the inside of these things with the black pigment just to get that really sooty look going on. Because these J79s and the Bs were not even the smokeless engines, so these things were just gonna be fucking filthy. I think we've got an opportunity to really bring that out from these hard charging Denang and Chulai based Phantoms. Come on, give me focus. Okay. Obviously set those aside to dry, and we'll be back. Okay, now that the ink magic wash has had time to dry, it's time to go and start doing some oil work. And for this, I've got 3 shades here. So first, the really dark color is ABT 502 Starship Filth, the always handy, always go-to color. ABT 502 Neutral Gray, and some Winsor & Newton. Come on. Ultramarine Violet. Now, what I'm doing with these, if you look at the actual exhaust pedal itself, and if you look at reference photos, they're not all the same. They're more the same on these than they are on the later, longer cans, but they're still different. And so I want to come in here and pick out these little areas in between the main pedals. And the neutral gray and that ultramarine violet give a sort of like purplish gray that I think works nicely for what I'm trying to get done here. And this is just kind of like a first strike sort of thing. Come back with more colors to really have fun with this. Basically, I'm putting down just little gashes of color. I'll come back and blend these in a minute. You can see that that's setting up a interesting looking paradigm there. And when I get some more on the brush, if it's too heavy, what I'm doing is I'm just doing a little bit of paint and then moving on until it kind of lightens up on the brush, and then I can come back and draw it out and blend it in as I need to. So nothing too fancy going on here. And these are all just straight oils. I haven't thinned them or anything. Because when I find that when I thin these, all of a sudden they want to run a whole lot more, and I want extremely targeted application. Yeah. Okay, next up, now that we've got those pieces painted up with the oil mix, it's time to grab the blending brush, and we're just going to do this. What this is doing is it's calming those down so they're still there. That oil is still there. You can still see the differential between the petals and the gaps between them. But it's not quite as stark. And so yeah, there we have it. It's coming along nicely. Okay, now we've got the oils out, let's go ahead and start in on the base. Now, I painted the base this sort of color intending to come back at it with oils, and so here we are. So I'm using the mix of Starship Filth and Ultramarine Violet. Nice dark purpley type color. And just stippling this in, kind of OPR style. And the cool thing about this mixture is I can come in with some regular Starship Filth on top of it, or I can come in with some more purpley mix wherever I feel like I need to, and just keep shit interesting. And then once this sets up, I can do even more on top of it. Build up those layers of interest. Because right now, they're just all going to blend together because they're still wet. But you can see just how much that is changing the look of these cans. Getting us to this neat sort of oiled place. I probably should carry it up here to this ring. So I want that ring to be bluer than the rest. But there's no reason I can't put a little stuff in there right now either. There we have it. That's looking pretty awesome. And just to compare, you can see the difference we've got going on here. This one has a lot more character to it. This one doesn't. So I'm going to keep on with this and we'll pick back up after that. All right, next on the exhaust, I want to go ahead and deal with this little band that runs right between the petals and the darker base that is slightly, very slightly, kind of like purple-ish tinted, sort of. And on reference photos I've looked at, this little band, just as this is very slightly tinted towards kind of purple, magenta-ish a little bit, this band is slightly tinted toward blue. It's, you know, it's a dark blue. It's nothing major. And these early exhausts are kind of boring from a weathering potential compared to the, you know, the longer late exhausts where you see a whole bunch of interesting heat staining and whatnot. These were a lot more staid. So my goal is to go in here and pick this out with a slight blue tone, but not really go too far because, you know, we're not talking about like the back end of a flanker with all those crazy heat staining type colors. This is much more subdued. So to do this, I'm going to use two oils. First, and kind of the one doing the heavy lifting, is some Winsor & Newton Phthalo Turquoise, or as I like to call it, Cthulhu Turquoise, and some Winsor & Newton Purple Lake. And these look like this in just their raw form. And because we're dealing with really small areas and we're dealing with something where I don't really want a lot of bleed and I don't want it catching into, these aren't really panel lines, but the engraved lines in the exhausts, I'm just going to work with them neat. And so all I do is just grab a little bit. I mean, it's very easy to get way too much on the brush for this kind of thing. So just grab a little bit. I'm going to slide this out of the way so it doesn't fuck with the focus. And then we can start on this portion back here where it's not going to be seen anyway, and just start very, very gently working it in. This phthalo turquoise is a very strong oil color, and it will definitely catch and take off on its own, so you need to watch out for that. So it's best to work with barely any on the brush. The compressors over there are like, why don't you airbrush this? Yeah, because I think oils are better for this really subdued thing, that's why. This is the reason I burn brushes out so fast. It's kind of a mix of like a sweeping motion and then some stippling just to get that nice natural thing. Because we don't want it to look like just this super bright, obvious painted band, right? We want it to look stainy. So, and that's a word I just coined, stainy. So basically, you just work this really slowly along the thing that we're dealing with here. And let me get around the horn on these two, and then we'll come back and do the purple lake. Okay, so the blue is down, or the phthalo turquoise is down. Now it's time to come in with some of that purple lake. And again, just grab tiny, tiny amounts. Enough that it, if you're looking at the pad here, that when you brush it, you barely get, I've still got fucking blue on this, but if you brush it, you barely get any, right? Just trace amounts. And then this stuff gets a bit more stipply. Basically just breaking up that blue so it doesn't look as much like just a blue band of bluiness. One thing you can do if you're having trouble with the oil around the outside, you can use that inner portion there that will be invisible as a place to unload some of the brush if you get too much on. Again, these are extremely subtle shifts we're going for here, which is probably stupid because this is the ass end of the aircraft down towards the bottom, and especially if you're taking it to a contest or something like that, the often less than lighting in one of those venues means that this stuff will just not even be noticed. And you might get somebody who doesn't count weathering among their preferences looking at it and being like, it looks splotchy or, whatever. But since I don't build for contest tables, I build more for what I want it to look like and how I want to photograph. I don't mind that subtlety because my lights can take it. Okay, there we have it. So that's looking like that. Going to give it a little bit of time to kind of set up and then come back and see what we've got. Next, while the oils are doing their thing on the outside of the exhaust cans, we need to deal with the inside of the exhaust cans. And on F-4Bs, these were before the smokeless engines and all that stuff. So they were very sooty, very smoky, got shit everywhere, left smoke trails in the sky. And I want to represent that on the inside of these exhausts with a nice, dark, sooty look. And in my experience, black oil paint has never really been the way to do that. It tends to be too smooth, too sheeny, and just not look the part. What does look the part? Fucking pigments. But pigments are messy, they're a pain in the ass to get in there, and I don't want them to get all over the oil paint on the outside. So what I've done is I've taken some of those ammo black pigments, dumped them into a little tattoo ink cup, and added some VMS airbrush thinner. Acrylic airbrush thinner. So basically you get to a awesome looking sludge like this. Now let's move that guy out of there. And all I do is get a little bit on the brush, right? I'm going to start way down in the bottom and just shove that pigment slurry in there and then draw it out toward the end of the nozzle. And yes, it looks like shit right now. Pigments aren't my favorite thing, but for some things, when you need a very blunt tool, they make an excellent hammer. And it may seem like, putting the thinner, it basically just makes it paint, right? Well, kind of, but the thing is, the thinner cooks off very fast, and when it is done, it just leaves behind pigment. It doesn't leave behind binders or any of that kind of stuff. So it's still a bit different than paint. It's just maybe a cleaner way of applying pigments and maintaining the density that you want along the way. And you can already see in there as it dries, it's getting a nice flat, dead flat look, which is exactly what I'm after. This is something I'm also thinking about using for the M4A1 Sherman that I'm working on right now. It's got this, at least the inspiration photo I'm using. I wouldn't say it's a reference photo because I'm not trying to recreate the exact thing, but it's my mood board for the build I'm working on. And it's got this just nasty, nasty stain on the transmission cover, running right down the, right down the middle of it, up along one of the bolt ridges. The bolt ridge is also all stained, gross, and it's this really thick looking thing. And I've been stressing about how to recreate because oils just don't have the opacity to do it. Acrylics, I don't know if they have the look to do it, but I think this pigment slurry might just be perfect. So yeah, now that this is drying out, you can see kind of the effect that it has down in there and how you get that nice dead flat sooty kind of look going on, contrasted to the not sooty, shinier, more varied outside of the exhaust. And I think that is a nice balance of things, especially considering how not really visible down the exhaust hole is going to be. So, cool. Okay, so I have to apologize. I went and fucked up the end game with the exhaust because I forgot to turn my microphone on. So the last step in getting these things together was applying a coat of MRP semi-matte clear to basically dull them down a little bit, take the edge off that aqua gloss wash, and get us a nice semi-matte finish. Yay us. And inside there you can see the pigment slurry has dried into a nice matte finish. Cool. So that is the exhaust for the F4. And that brings us to the end of episode 6, which focused on the exhaust and the landing gear, which is in a pretty good place. I still need to do a little tiny bit of work on the wheels here and there, but overall, I'm pretty happy with how things are looking, and we are ready to move on. So what's going to come up in part 7? Well, basically all the cleanup shit that has to happen to get the thing ready for paint. So I've got some stuff I need to do in the cockpit, namely the combing, the HUD, the windscreen, that sort of thing. I've got a couple levers back here that need to be sorted out. This back piece that fits the canopy needs to go in. And I've got some general cleanup. You can see, I've still got some CA here that I need to clean up on the intakes to get those seams sorted out. I've also got some kind of back here by the exhaust. Nothing too big, nothing major, but just enough that I think it'll warrant its own sort of like get ready for paint episode. Then when we move into paint, we've got basically 3 elements that need to happen. First of all, like on the leading edge of the intake here, the Cora guard needs to be restored on the wings because I had a little bit of cleanup I need to do right here. So leading edge of the wings, get that sorted, get that masked off, yay. Then we move down here to the white on the underside. There's already some, but it's very haphazard. It hasn't really been fleshed out yet. So that needs to happen. And then we can come on to the top and do the light gold gray. And after that's done, it's going to move into decals. And I'm actually thinking about possibly masking and painting some of the markings. Mainly like the national insignia, so it would be one here, one way over here on the wing fold, and then the ones up by the intakes. And then, the big Marines written on the fuselage. Basically just those main elements. I'm considering it. I'm not sold yet one way or another. We shall see. But stay tuned. Episode 7 will get us pretty much all the way to the point where we can start really having fun with this kit. Because, in my opinion, the 2 really fun parts of builds are getting it together and all the painting and weathering. This intermediate stage of getting it ready for paint, huge pain in the ass. So, thanks for watching. As always, if you want to get these episodes a little bit early, feel free to sign up for Patreon. I post these things there, a day or 2 before they go live. And on a closing note, I have to apologize for being absent for several weeks, or hell, it might be months at this point. Basically just had a shitload of stuff on the bench, taking up time, taking up attention, and also life has been interesting. So, again, just kind of stealing my productivity a bit and kind of killing my desire to make videos. But I think all that is kind of shifting into the rear view now, so we're back, and the F-4B is back. So stay tuned. 7, 8, and beyond will be coming along at some point in the nearest future. And until then, thanks for watching. Catch y'all later.